Joan Burton TD to wind up the debate.
Comrades and delegates, you know, what we have heard this morning from the speakers, Stephen Goulding from Newcastle West talking about the local loss of employment in small villages and towns and the big loss of employment that Dell represents to Limerick. We've heard Tom Kelleher from North County Dublin talking about the devastation that the loss of SR Technics is, in the sense of this is 1,100 highly skilled workers who are among the best at their trades in the world, and we are going to apparently let that whole skill set walk away when worldwide we need an aviation industry, whether or not the world is in recession. So, you know, the chairperson of the Labour Party, Brian O'Shea, has spent the last couple of months desperately working with other public representatives in Waterford for some plan of salvation, again for Waterford Glass, for all, particularly of the men who work there, generations of skill that have been developed by this country, and that is an icon for the name of Ireland in terms of products and in terms of markets right around the world. And where has our government been? Are they just frightened, or are they asleep on the job? Because if we talk about the Dells, the SR Technics and the Waterford Glasses, remember that behind all of those big employers, there's probably 2.5 local, small and medium industry jobs and service jobs that support those big firms. And that is where the government is failing to have a strategy to put jobs, job retention, job creation, upskilling, training, and pathways and bridges to jobs at the centre of the forthcoming budget. We heard from Arthur Spring, we heard from Alan Kelly, our candidate for Ireland South in the European elections, that creating employment in the small and medium sector is vital to recovering our economy, not just in the big cities, but in the towns and villages across the country, if we want to keep all those GAA and football teams that have come back to life over the last 15 years. So our message today to the government is that on the 7th of April, when you bring forward a budget, don't just talk about cuts and deficits. Talk about a plan of recovery and a plan of job creation. In 1930, John Maynard Keynes wrote, "The world has been slow to realize that we are living this year in the shadow of one of the greatest economic catastrophes of modern history." And recently, the son of the great John Kenneth Galbraith, Jamie Galbraith, who's a professor of economics in the United States, wrote in relation to banks and modern banking that banks are not money lenders, banks are money creators. They do that by making loans. And this is in terms of what we do with the banking industry. You know, put aside our annoyance at all those individuals who've ripped us off, destroyed companies and destroyed lives. Just let's place that to one side. Pat Rabbit suggested it should be the subject of a detailed investigation, and I agree. But we have to move forward. And at the heart of what we want to do with the banking system, it's about getting credit flowing again so that businesses up and down the country can keep workers in jobs, and so that businesses up and down the country can create new jobs. You know, during the Great Depression, Woody Guthrie wrote a very famous ballad called the Ballad of Pretty Boy Floyd. And some of the people here whom I know are singers. I don't see Tom Crean here, but Tom Crean would know this song. You know, he said in that ballad, that some men rob you with a six-gun, and about the bankers, that some men rob you with a fountain pen. Now, the job of the Labour Party, as we go into the local and the European elections, is to say to people, we have a different vision. We have a vision of a country where we can come together. Jim O'Brien from Portlaoise said, it's about decency, this sense of social solidarity and decency, that we are all in this together, and that we will come out of it together if we put our creativity, our ingenuity, and all of the financial intelligence that we have built up over the last 15 years. I'm old enough to remember when I was a very small child, newly living in Rialto, that my father was out of work for about 6 months. And I remember every day cycling to Sandymount because we had nothing else much to do except go to the beach that long summer. Now, Lorraine Kingston talked about the fear in Cork, that the era of the closure of Dunlops, that people who are now grandparents and great-grandparents remember scarring their lives, that their children and grandchildren worry now that if we allow a drift to happen where we're only listening to people who want to talk about cuts and only cuts, that we will sleepwalk with this government back into that kind of depression. It's a mental depression as much as an economic depression.